All right, thank you. All right, I'm going to start off by sharing my screen here, and hopefully everybody can see that, and Jen will monitor and see if we have a few more folks coming in here as we go. So I am Dan Gage. A little bit about me. Uh, I just ended a 30-year career in K-12 education. I was a special education teacher, a social studies teacher, an administrator. I coached. I was advisor to a number of clubs, and I was also very involved in advocacy for the teachers union. So in the last really 3, 4 years, I've become really concerned about issues of mental health, things that I'm seeing with many of my students. And after I left K-12 education, I was approached by Wisconsin After School Network and offered the opportunity to get involved. And started to do some research and saw the positive benefits, some of which I'm going to talk about today, of out of school time or after school programs, before school programs, summer programs. And I just really became convinced that these programs were absolutely essential for the mental health of our students, the academic, progress, development of our students, young people. And so I really feel that it is so important that young people have the social connection as well as, guidance from folks like you, from mentors, caring adults, people who care about really, the kids themselves and have an opportunity to interact with them. So I'm going to ask that you go ahead and share a couple things in the chat. And so what I'm going to ask is that if you could give me in the chat what your current role is, just so I kind of have an idea of who we have here, what population, are you serving, a rural elementary, or are you working in a boys and girls club in a more urban area? Anything like that, I would much appreciate knowing a little bit. And I'm going to try to figure out how to pop up my chat here. So yeah, if you would just share your role, and got ahead of myself there. What your role is, what population you serve, and how long you have been in that position. Uh, that would be helpful for me to know a little bit about you. So you can do that right in the chat. So seeing a couple pop up here. So we've got Megan, school age director, YMCA, more of a rural area, 1 year in the position. Rachel, on-site accessibility coordinator at Upham Woods Outdoor Learning Center in the Dells. It's like a lot of camp stuff. Terry, marketing and grants director for Boys and Girls Club of Kenosha. 81% low income. Nicole, coordinator of a rural 21 CLC. 50 children, first year. All right. April, Executive Director of School Age, YMCA of Metro Milwaukee, urban and suburban populations, 13 years. Wow. And Alice in the rural CLC school building. So we have a real wide variety, some CLCs, some Ys, Boys and Girls Club. Um, so really happy to have you here. If anybody else wants to chime in the chat. I am going to try to make this as interactive as possible. I had the pleasure of teaching high school kids in the middle of a pandemic. So I know how that goes sometimes, but obviously you're not high school students. So I am going to expect that we can get a little bit of interaction going so that you can get a little more out of this than just sort of a sit and get kind of thing. So Appreciate your participation. All right, so we're going to start off with talking about just how important what you do is, and just kind of running through a few things to make sure that you know how important what you do is. So big number, 96% of Wisconsin parents are satisfied or extremely satisfied with their child's after school or out of school time program, whether that be camps in the summer. That is an unbelievable number. Of course, in our world, 96% of anything is pretty amazing. And I did. I worked with kids every day for over 30 years, hour after hour, and I know what you do is incredibly challenging. And it's hard to, I think, with out of school time programs to make people understand how important it is. But the point is that you're doing it well, and the numbers really show that you're doing it well. So, out of school time is really absolutely imperative, vital for families around the state for a number of reasons. It provides that safe place for students, young people to be every day in those hours that they are not at school and they are also not being, not with a parent. It is that caring environment where they see the same adults on a pretty regular basis, and they know that they're cared for. And then, of course, the academic support, and beyond that, the enrichment. Um, we know how much learning loss there was. We know that out of school time programs can't do everything as far as academics, but hopefully working with K-12 education systems and the academic support, and I think even the enrichment, giving young people an opportunity to do hands-on learning has been a really important opportunity that young people have in out of school time programs. And then, I think parents understand this, at least to some degree, but oftentimes the wider community really doesn't understand how important after school and before school programs are for young people and their families. That there's a lot of parents that don't have a lot of options with children, and it's really is vital to the economy so parents can continue to do their jobs. And it can also be something that's really good for the families, because oftentimes, maybe some of that homework struggle at home for families gets taken care of after school, and kids come home happy and ready to spend time with parents in a more positive way. And, I think one of the things that all of you do really well is work with kids and other program leaders and employees in making sure kids have positive benefits. And I think that everybody has all kinds of stories they can share about the positive impact of programs they work in. However, I don't know that those stories are always being effectively shared, and really telling those stories is essential if we're going to do effective outreach and have a positive impact on funding for programs. Um, so um, I want to just kind of go over a couple additional points here. The Wisconsin Department of Public Instruction last spring came out with some numbers from the Youth Risk Assessment Survey. I think they call it something else, but that's what they used to call it when I was teaching. And they said that there was a significant impact on students who were involved in out of school programs. They reported a significantly lower numbers with regards to anxiety and depression. And if you think about it, this is not really that surprising, because we know that social isolation, lack of opportunity to engage with both other kids and adults has a detrimental impact on kids' health, and so mental health. And so, it's not surprising that that would be the case. And this is really just some numbers about what parents are saying for after school. They're saying that, that their kids in out of school time programs are building life skills. 73% say they're getting academic help. 85% say they're getting physical activity. They're receiving a healthy snack. And yet we know that there are still very significant barriers to young people and families having access to quality out of school time programs. So we know that the only thing that's going to increase access to those out of school time programs really is uh, additional funding. And that's really what outreach is about. It's about letting people know what is happening in programs, and then also it's also important that we let policymakers know how important these programs are. And then I did want to just kind of throw this out and pop this up. And this is available, Jen, I think, right? This is available on our website. So the Wisconsin After School Network has a great one-pager that you want to have a copy handy of it to you because it does have all of this information that I've kind of been going through and more about really how important these programs are. So this is just kind of a one-stop great place to go to get a broad overview of not only what Wisconsin After School Network does, but also the importance of out-of-school time programs. So these, and by the way, these slides will be available on the Wisconsin After School Network's advocacy page, and we'll kind of give you a link to that at the end as well. So you don't necessarily have to write anything down. You can simply access these. But I'm going to ask you, like I said, I know we've had a few people join. I am going to ask you to interact a little bit here as we go. So, and this is, I just want to kind of lay some of the groundwork here first, and then we're going to get a little bit more interactive. Um, so why is advocacy vital to the health of out of school time programs? Why do you need to do outreach? Many of you I know have a lot of experience, or some of you have a lot of experience in this area. I saw that we had somebody that was involved in marketing. You know that this is absolutely essential that we market or advocate for out of school time programs. And the OST, I just use that to shorten out of school time programs. And of course, that covers before school, after school, summer programs, camps, etc. It even covers, like early childhood as well. So a couple of things. Number one, we know that many of our OST programs, out of school time programs, rely on short-term funding sources or temporary sources of funding. And then we also know that parents and the community really rely on these programs. So it's really essential that these programs continue, but having short-term funding means that you always have to be doing outreach in order to continue that funding. And if you're involved with a 21C CLC, you know that you have a 5-year window, and there are no guarantees that that funding is going to continue after that point. And so effective advocacy is really required for sustainability, making sure that kids have access to programs that are of high quality and really a good part of high quality is making sure that kids have access to high quality adults like yourself. And we know that, of course, with increasing wages without increasing funding, that's an issue. And honestly, if we don't speak up, and if you don't speak up about your programs, honestly, who's going to do that? And you might be program leader for a CLC, and I know that is a very challenging position to be in, and there's a million things to do. But if you don't start telling the story of your program to people in your community, it's unlikely that, maybe you'll get some parents who talk about it, and that's great. But it's likely that may not be the case. So really, you've heard of grassroots support or grassroots advocacy. Um, but really, if you think about grassroots, what's important for grass or any plant to grow, it's the soil. And so we're going to kind of get into really today, how do you go about preparing that soil? Preparing that soil is not the only part about outreach that's important. Obviously, you plant a garden, you want to get that soil ready. It's a really important thing to do, but then you've got to plant, you've got to weed, you can water, and you've got to harvest in order to really get the full extent of that of that work. So this is where we're going to get a little bit more interactive here. So I'm going to put a QR code, but I'll also put the link into the chat. So you can either do it on your phone or you can do it um, with your with just the computer you're on. So I'm going to put this link here into the chat. And what I'm asking you to do, just to get you kind of thinking about things, is I want you to, if you've never done a Menti before, that's what this is called. Um, I want you to share some words about how you feel about your program that you work in and the work that you do. Okay. So I want you to share a little bit about program. The link is in the chat, but if you want to scan it with your phone, you can do that. I'm going to pull up it's going to create a word cloud here. Hopefully I can figure out how to do this, make this work. So if you want to just put in 1 or 2 or 3 words that kind of represent how you feel about the work you do, and I'll see if I can figure out how to make this go full screen here. Um, yeah, that may not happen. Oh, wait, present probably, huh? So if you want to just go ahead and pop 1, 2, or 3 words about how you feel about your program and the work you do. There's a link in the chat if you've come in late. You can just pop this in. We'd love to see a few. Yep, we're getting some more responses. And if you haven't seen one of these before, the larger the word, the more times people have, duplicated that word in what they're saying. So we've got a number of responses. Be cool to see a few more. We'll give it another minute or so here, or 30 seconds or so. And seeing a lot of great words, supportive being the most important. Oh, now it changed to importance as being the uh, most common word, but supportive, very large there. Meaningful. Uh, I think that's hugely important. I was very blessed to be, or I felt very blessed that I got to get up and go to a job for 32 years that I knew mattered. And I think you feel the same way. Connecting, inclusive, exhausting. Yeah, I as a longtime teacher, I understand that as well. Okay. So if you didn't get a chance, you can still respond. That link is in the chat. Now we'll see if I can figure out how to get out of this. Okay, so I can leave that link up. So again, a lot of positive things that people said, and the question would be, do your parents, employees, community members know how you feel about what you do? I would imagine some of them do, but a lot of times the tendency is to focus on the negative. And so I think, really focusing on some of those more positive aspects can really help us, our mental wellness, right? But also, it's really the first step towards outreach and advocacy for gaining more support for your program. So before I go any further, I want to emphasize, really these 2 things. If you remember nothing else from this webinar, above all, the programs that you work in, they have to be quality programs. And if you're just starting, that takes time. We all understand that. But it means having quality people. It means having the latest research and understanding what's going to be most effective with children. It's about talking to the children. It's about talking to their parents about what they like, what they don't like. It's talking to the employees about what they see as being effective and ineffective. And then it is enormously important that you go about building relationships with people because that's really the key to advocacy is building those relationships. So these two things, if you don't have these two things, you can do all the outreach that you want. You're probably not going to gain a lot of support for your program unless you are making sure that you are providing quality programming and that you are creating sort of a web of relationships that are going to be important for really for the continuing success of your program. All right, so I'm going to just kind of break down some of the effective steps for advocacy, or I should say steps for effective advocacy. And really, if you read about advocacy and how to do outreach, this is sort of an amalgamation, a whole bunch of things sort of summarized and brought together, different research that's out there. So number one, and we're going to kind of break down each of these individually too as we go. So number one, assessing needs and goals, identifying who the decision makers, who your supporters might be, who allies might be, and we'll talk a little bit about who are the naysayers, who are people that maybe don't support what you're doing. Researching, knowing something about funding sources, the importance of school time programming, obviously, really developing. Really, some of that research can even be done by you compiling information that you can share out with your stakeholders, and then developing a strategic plan. And one of the most important parts of that is developing effective messaging, and then um, and then taking action. I always like uh, the idea that sometimes when we think about, developing a strategic plan for outreach, sometimes it seems so big. We start thinking that, I can't do this because it's too overwhelming. And I think we should think about what is the big picture, what are the big things that we ultimately want to accomplish. But it's really critical that you start by doing the smallest things. And it's right just how the human brain works. We can do little tasks that lead towards something big, but it can be really challenging to just try to tackle those really big things. So taking action, thinking big but starting small, and then you're always evaluating how is this going, and so really this evaluation process really goes on while you're doing all of these things. So you can be taking action and at the same time assessing, what, maybe that isn't the direction I need to go. Maybe I need to make some adjustments. So these are not necessarily you finish one and you're done, you finish the second one and you're done, but they're kind of an ongoing process, steps that you need to be thinking about. So we're going to just break down this, and I'm going to get you a little, if I can get you to interact in the chat a little bit, that would be great. So, I want you to think about what are the primary needs of the programs that you are working in or you are leading. You may not know the answer to that question depending on the position that you're in. And so, thinking about what would make your program even better for children, youth, and families. And then I think instead of just considering what we think is needed in the program to make it more effective, this is part of that building relationship. It is enormously important that we listen to staff, parents, the kids themselves. And I think in doing that, you're building those relationships. You're also doing an assessment on what are the needs within the program. And then, so what I'm going to have you do right now is if you had to be specific about things that are needed in the program you work within, um, what would you put down? And let's try to stay away from just money. Right? Um, but if you need, additional staffing, if you need more money for, STEAM programs or whatever it might be, if you could put that into the chat, that would that would kind of inform me a little bit. And I think it's important to kind of see what other people. So if you would just reflect a little bit on what you think the primary needs are in your program and pop those into the chat, um, I think everybody would appreciate that. So I'll just give you a moment here to think. So what are the needs? And you can access the chat just by clicking on the chat on the bottom bar. So Anne mentioned here behavior intervention, professional development for staff. Rachel need winter outdoor gear to loan out. Yeah, you can see kids coming in. New roof, so those big things, those capital improvements, additional volunteers, more resources, and experts for social emotional learning, PD for social emotional learning, uh, qualified staff. Staffing is getting more and more challenging. Mental health professionals or staff who work daily, more appealing outdoor playground equipment, staff that engage. Yeah, uh, there's no question that it is getting more challenging to find um, people that are going to be effective mentors for kids, and then more community support. Right, that's what we're kind of talking about here. So thank you so much. More time. Yeah, that's thanks. Streamlined operations, building more connections. Thank you everybody for kind of pitching in. Yeah, time. So I appreciate that. Um, so let's let's kind of continue to move on. So one of the things when you're assessing is how do you leverage what your strengths and the relationships towards goals that you eventually are going to kind of to really kind of collaborate with others to come to the consensus of certain goals. And I always think that that's the first thing is what are your strengths, and then build on the relationships that you already have. And then, of course, I think probably a lot of you are familiar with SMART goals. That, as much as I hated them when I was teaching and doing my evaluation plan, they are incredibly important. That we have a clear idea, and it's fine that these goals change as you evolve in your understanding about the needs of your program. But having clearly defined goals and that are specific, measurable, achievable, and realistic it are that's really the key, is having something that you can actually do and you actually people agree that you need. And I'm going to kind of fly through some of this because I already look at the clock here, and goes fast when you're talking, but I want to give you to have some more time for interaction here. So the next step really after assessment is that identification. Who are the people who can make the decisions? And the tricky part with this sometimes is that can be hard to know, but most school boards have committees that work on certain things. Getting to know people in our community, whether that be the mayor or city council or our local legislators or people on a county board, or sometimes it can be other groups of people, committees within a community as well. Research your potential supporters. who might be your partners. Uh, One of the things that I think we often don't think of is grandparents can be really important supporters, but it's also really important for internal advocacy that you really take a look at people that you work with every day. They are advocates for your programming. The parents, obviously, if you're in an elementary school or a middle school, um, the staff in that building is incredibly important to get to know. The administration is important to get to know. You have to sell your program really to those folks before you can do anything else. In my opinion, if you're in a school building, that's really important. And then knowing who might oppose you. And then this is something we all always feel comfortable doing, but actually inviting those people in to see what you do and how important it is. And actually getting to know them and understanding them, their objections. And then this is the research part. You can get this from the WAN one pager, but you can also get it from something called the America After 3 p.m. Health and Wellness Report. Um, so I'm just going to pop this open. So this is from the After School Alliance, which is a national organization. And this is just on Wisconsin here. And, this has the basic data that you need. You don't need to know everything, but knowing a few critical facts can really go a long ways in sort of making the case for your program. So, and then obviously the local information, how many students and families. Some organizations do a really good job with this, others just aren't doing it right now. Um, what would happen if your program was suddenly gone? Being able to describe that, I'm thinking of a 21st century program. If that money was, if that grant ends and you had 5 years of parents relying on before and after school programs for their children, how is that going to affect employers in the area? How is that going to affect the families themselves? And then, again, how does OST, out of school time programs, impact employers? That's becoming something that is increasingly becoming recognized by employers, that out of school time programs are really essential for their workforce. And then, this is kind of what I was alluding to. This is a kind of research, I guess, is really engaging with those internal groups. So as I was saying before, parents, but maybe even before that, your own staff, engaging with them and understanding what they think is important, what they see the needs. Um, People want to be listened to. And if you're somebody who is listening to those individuals, it is going to pay dividends. You never know who, you might have an employee whose whose parents run an important business or are on the school board. It's one of those things, you never know what you don't know necessarily until you talk to people to find out. And I think that internal advocacy is the easiest first step, and it's something that you can do and get started on really right away. Um, and then, understanding this is part of the research is, okay, how does that local school board work? How does the county commission work? County board work? How does the process from legislation at the state level? Um, and then planning a strategy. How will you begin? And really, I kind of laid it out for you. First, I think is that assessing. What are those small steps you can do to build relationships that are going to help you with that assessment? And then, thinking about a natural progression of how does each step build on the next step, build towards the next step, reach ultimately the goal that you have for, for yeah, I remember somebody put in the we need a new roof. Well, obviously, you have to know what is that going to cost. You have to have people come out and do an estimate and find out what's going on. You need to identify the problems that something like that, an infrastructure issue, is causing you, and then you have to write them down. And then I think really the one of the earliest stages beyond assessing and really coming to a point where you're building some relationships is effective messaging, using what you know already, keeping it short. Really thinking about two or three compelling facts or stories, uh, about your program or about out of school time programs in general, and then shaping that message to the audience. So we're going to just talk about elevator. Sometimes they call them an elevator speech or an elevator pitch. It's really a short summary to quickly define who you are, what you do, and then offering some kind of a value proposition. What value do you bring to the community, to families, to employer? So value proposition is a promise of the value of the service delivered by your organization. And then a good elevator pitch is 30 to 45 seconds. You probably only, if you're meeting somebody for the first time, it's about as much time as you might have to convince somebody to continue listening to you. So that 30 to seconds to a minute at most, it has to be interesting. If you just rattle off a bunch of statistics, that's not going to really draw the attention. And it all has to be catered to the audience. You have to think about who you're talking about. So in some ways, you have to have maybe a little version of a quick message that you do with people, and then you have to come off as confident but not arrogant. So crafting the message is the who, what, where, why, when, how. Uh, I'm going to go through this stuff pretty quickly. So you will have access to this if you want to go back and take a look at this. So who is your audience? The parents, custodial, caregivers, school day staff, school board members. And that I'm saying school board members, but that could be a, Boys and Girls Club board. It could be, it could be a YMCA board. The community at large, business leaders, elected officials. And then what you really need to focus on is what's most important to that group of people. If you're talking to employers, what's most important is that their workforce is reliable and they show up and they stay through their entire shift every day. If you're talking to parents, you're talking about, mental wellness and learning loss and those types of things. So I'm just throwing these out very, very quickly. And then I'm going to give you a cheat sheet that's going to have all this on it. Okay. It's quick activity. So effective who terms, these are just words that resonate typically. Caring, knowledgeable, well-trained community volunteers, serving children in poverty, serving students in need of additional support, high quality, the what of what your OST program offers: high quality academic support, enrichment, nutritious meals, social skills, the where: safe, structured environment, school-based setting, community-based organization, faith-based location. When is before school, after school, this many hours a week, etc. And then how, is the what you're doing or how you're doing it: well designed and engaging learning opportunities, hands-on. Again, these are just terms that are really, they resonate. They're shown to be very effective in messaging. And then these are just some more words that kind of resonate: quality, hands-on learning, safe and structured environment, academic support, healthy behaviors, etc. So what I'm going to now do here is I'm going to put a another QR code up on the screen. If you want to scan that with your phone, that links you to a document that is kind of serves as a cheat sheet for that who, what, where, those effective words that resonate. And so I'm going to we're going to take, even though we're a little short on time, I'm going to take about 10 minutes here. And I'm going to have you create a very quick elevator speech. So you can scan the screen with your phone camera to bring up the Google Doc. I'm also going to put that in the chat. So let me just go ahead to throw, and I'll go back in just a second. Copy link chat, and then I'm going to go back. So the link is in the chat. So if you just have a computer, you don't have your phone, that is the cheat sheet for some of those really effective messaging words. So on a piece of paper or on a Google Doc or whatever you have, I'm going to give you about 7 to 10 minutes here to create a uh, create elevator pitch, very short, and then I'm going to go ahead and switch over here. And so you're going to use that Google Doc link, and then I'm going to direct you. I'll put this in the chat. So I've got another. So this is where you're at. I'd like it if you'd like to. Uh, I'd really appreciate if you would put to share your elevator pitch on Padlet. And I'll put that link in the chat. So this is the cheat sheet up the first Google Doc is your cheat sheet, and that just looks like this. So that's just got all those things that we just talked about. And then when you get to the Padlet, so when you open the Padlet, if you want to post, you just go down to the little plus sign and you can post your um, elevator pitch right in here. And I'm going to give you a quick example of that as well. So I'm just going to do a quick one up here. See if I can find it. Of course, I got to write mine ahead of time, and then I'll shut up for a few minutes here. Um, so if you want to write it ahead of time and then just copy and paste it, this was my little elevator pitch that I do in my advocacy work with Wisconsin After School now. All right, I'm going to shut off my microphone and my camera, and I'm going to give you about 10 minutes here to create your elevator pitch. I'm going to go back to this one. And let's see here. So I'll bring you back at about 10:53. We're going to bring you back in just about 2 minutes here. Probably not enough time, but we've had a few of you who have responded. If you leave that tab open, you can continue to add on to uh, sort of a collection here so you can see what some other people have also put down. So I'm going to just kind of leave that. We'll just give you another 30 seconds here to finish that out. Okay. Um, you can all see that if you go to the Padlet. So I'm not going to share that on the screen here. Uh, I do want to thank you very much for being willing to engage. I know that's not always possible depending on what you're doing right now. Sometimes people are driving or they have other tasks that they're attending to at the same time, so I get it. But thank you very much for those who were able to do that. We're going to wrap up a little bit, just talking about what are some of those first initial steps. So I know that for some of you, these are pretty obvious things. You've been involved in marketing your program, you've been in this for a long time. And we have other people that maybe that's really not their expertise. And so we're just gonna talk a little bit about, what are those steps for taking action. And some of this will sound kind of repeated, but I think it's some points that need to be kind of emphasized and revisited. So taking action, at some point you assess, you do your research, you build those relationships, um, but you have to really start somewhere. So, and really, as I mentioned previously, the easiest place to start is with internal advocacy. So that's, as I mentioned before, your staff, school staff, parents. It's not reaching out to maybe board members or employers or anything like that, but it's just working on doing that advocacy piece within your program. And a lot of what you're doing is you can actually build relationships and assess what you need in your program. At the same time, you're actually starting this step of internal advocacy. I think this is one that's often skipped, and I think it's enormously important that you really start with the people that are most closely touched by the work that your program does. Um, and some of it is just being available to people. This sounds like a really basic thing, but the more you're around parents or the kids themselves or the staff that you're working with, the more you're going to have an understanding of what they think is important. And really that's the first step. It sounds so basic, but understanding what people think is important is the first step to building supporters for your program. Listen to them, ask them questions. Um, if you're school-based, learn about the academic programs there, the behavioral programs, see if you can mirror some of those programs, what support you can offer. If you have teachers who have children in your after school program, certainly engaging with them can be really critical. And really what you're kind of doing by doing this internal advocacy is you're building sort of a foundational base of experience for understanding how to go about doing this work. In other words, it's to some extent it's practice for moving on to those external groups. And those external groups, they can include, I should have said just board members, because we have a lot of people that aren't running CLCs. So whatever oversight board that you have, having those engaging with those individuals is really important. Community leaders. I know here I live in Green Bay that our Boys and Girls Club is really good at inviting the mayor in, inviting people who are sometimes in public relations from different corporate entities in town. And then, as I kind of mentioned before, right, it's all about networking. You never know the person that you might be talking to may be somebody that can help you. And so, unless you engage with those individuals, you're never going to know. So, I think we all kind of know how important building a network of individuals who could be supporters. That's really essential. I'm just taking a look at the time here. We're just about out of time, but so at some point, as you can see in the picture, you really have to dip your foot into the pool, your toe into the pool. At some point, you have to, after you've kind of discovered who you think are going to be some of, your key supporters, you've got to invite them in, whether they're teachers, administrators, parents, community members, mayors, school board members, other oversight board members. You got to have open houses, which I know many of you do, thinking about things like parent dinners. Having a social media presence can be important, showing what your kids in your program are doing, and then getting followers, right? That's the key to effective social media. And then really educating about how important your program is, and the benefits and the needs. So I'm going to leave the rest of the slides, because there's a few more slides, about really important things like, how do you ask people for things? That can be really hard to do. But it isn't, I don't think as hard as maybe you imagine it to be. A lot of it is building those relationships and knowing who are the right people to ask for those things, and then knowing what you need. So I'm going to just kind of skip ahead here quick. And just go to this last slide here. I want to thank you very much for attending. The slides will be on the advocacy page. And if you have any further questions, I think, Jen, we're going to work on getting me on the website and email address, but you can always contact Wisconsin After School Network if you want some help with some advocacy, if you want to talk and get some additional advice. I'm always available for that. I'm going to go ahead and stop the share and just let you know I really appreciate you engaging and talking, even if it's just through the chat and Padlet and things like that. I appreciate that. So again, thank you very much for staying here. Jen, did you have anything else you needed to do?
Yeah, two really quick things. I'm going to launch a poll that's just 5 simple questions. If you can take 30 seconds to answer that poll before you leave this morning. And then secondly, I put some of those direct links in the chat. So I put the link to the advocacy page and the After School Alliance website that Dan shared. is on there. There's a link directly to that Wisconsin After Three page, and the PDF fact sheet that he shared is also on there. You can access it and download it and save it as a PDF. And then professional development came up a couple of times in the needs in the chat. And so I put the links directly to our ongoing professional development opportunities. So if that is helpful for people to be able to access, those are primarily free. And some of the courses have some minimal cost affiliated. So I wanted to put those in there. And then again, just the poll. And thank you all again for joining us and participating today.
Thank you.